Today, we do a brief walk around of Vince, the dually, and fix a nagging oil problem. All right, new project today. You always see this truck in the background of all the videos. This is a 1995 Ford F-350 Powerstroke. It's one of the first Powerstrokes that came off Ford's production line. This truck currently has about 69,000 miles on it, so as far as a diesel engine goes, it's pretty much brand new. We use this to tow our car trailer whenever we have to load up a car, take it to paint, or we go cross country to different car shows. This is the rig. Dead reliable, never let us down on the side of the road, never had to have the tow truck towed. But today we're going to look into an issue with some oil leakage. It's pretty common for the oil pans in these Powerstrokes 7.3s to rust out and leak. Since this is a California truck, that doesn't seem likely, but I'm losing just a ton of oil. On a recent trip out to Texas to pick up the Texas car, we were going through 2 quarts a day, which is just way more than this truck has ever consumed. So after looking into what it takes to replace the oil pan seal, because they don't use a gasket on this, but now I guess one of the companies, Moroso, sells a gasket. I looked into that, and to replace the gasket, you either have to remove the cab and pull the engine, or raise the cab and raise the engine, which just seems like a hell of a lot of labor. So while investigating that, I found that someone mentioned something about the dipstick tube, and that the dipstick tube is held in with a lock nut, almost like a conduit electrical lock nut. So the dipstick tube housing goes in from the inside of the oil pan and seals with an O-ring, and then on the outside of the pan there's this locking nut. So I'm going to jack up the front of the car, or the truck, and put it up on stands today because this truck is low. And I'm going to check that out. And I'm gonna, once I get under there and get a view of it, I'll let you guys know what I find. If that's not the oil leak, then we're gonna have to probably investigate a little deeper, because the way the factory seals the pan is like an RTV or a sealant. I don't know if it's some type of epoxy or whatever. I haven't looked into it, but it's this special, unobtainium stuff that you can only get from the Ford dealer. So I'm going to check in to see what I can find, and if it's this dipstick tube, and I'll bring you guys back then. Okay, guys. I was skeptical. I really was. When I first looked under here, oh, sorry about that light. When I first looked under here, I thought, oh man, there's an awful lot of oil all over the side of the pan. Now, if I go to the other side of the truck, it's not this bad. And I thought, well, how's it getting slung that far forward? I thought, it's got to be the front cover. But then there's the oil dipstick tube deal, and you can see that hexagonal ring, that lock nut that's on the outside. And I reached up there and I thought, it's not loose. It looks like it's tight. And I touched it with my fingers and tried to turn it. It wouldn't turn. But I thought, you know what? I'll clean up around it, and I'll grab a pair of channel locks, because it's real tight in there. So basically I had to pull the trans lines away from the pan a little bit. They're not attached. That clip just holds them together. And I thought, well, I'll just get the pliers in there and see if I can get a, maybe a quarter turn on it. The freaking thing turned at least one full rotation. So whether that's enough when the oil pan is under pressure or not to allow, that stuff to like squirt out there. I don't know how bad it was flowing out, but if you look around here, I mean, it's all over the starter. It's all over the back of the bell housing cover. It's on the transmission, and that's not transmission oil on the bottom of it. The transmission doesn't leak. So pretty much everything is pointing at that one little item there. So I'm hoping that by tightening that up, that will curtail some of the leaks. I'm not trying to get rid of all the leaks, because quite honestly, from the day you buy a diesel, especially, some of the older ones like this one, I mean, hell, this thing's almost 30 years old. They sweat oil from the first time you start them up. It's just kind of the nature of diesel engines, or that's been my experience anyway. So even if you take care of the leaks, it's like, you still end up with diesel or oil or, something on the bottom of the motor. So the big thing is just to try to contain it the best you can. So I'm going to just check on this thing every time I change the oil, and it's actually due for an oil change. I haven't changed the oil since we got back from Texas, and hell, that was back in May, which is what, almost 11 months ago. Every time I do the oil change, I'm just going to go ahead and check that nut, because honestly, it's not that hard to check it and put a spin on it if it's loose. There are companies out there that sell an upgraded dipstick tube thingamabobber that goes in there, all billet and everything, and it's supposed to solve this problem. The only problem I have with it is that you have to undo that lock nut and drop the existing one down into the pan and just kind of leave it there, which, the thing holds like, what, 3-4 gallons of oil, and it would just sit in the bottom. It wouldn't be an issue, because quite honestly, the oil pickup tube is not going to pick up a piece that big. But if I can maintain it just as the way it is, I'm just going to try to do that for the time being, and see what it gives me. I may come back here in a few months if I've got the truck out, on the drive here at the shop, and get under here with some purple cleaner and clean everything up, and then kind of keep an eye on it from there. But I cleaned up that area right around the tube pretty good, so it'll be self-evident pretty quickly whether or not that was the issue or not. So I'm going to go up topside. I'll give you guys a quick rundown of this truck and some of the projects that we have planned for it here in the future, and then we'll wrap this video up. All right, here, excuse a motorcycle on the way. Here's a quick overview of the truck. It's a 1995 Ford F-350 Powerstroke diesel. I have reason to believe, and this was a rumor when the first few of these trucks came off the line, my detailer, the last time I took it in to have it detailed, removed it. But Ford had marked right here on the core support a number. It was in, like a red crayon type or paint marker, which indicated which number in sequence the Powerstrokes came off the line. Hey, if you know anything about this, put a comment down below the video and let me know, because just like anything, this was before 1995. That was before a lot of this internet stuff happened. But that was flying around in the rumor mill back then when these trucks were first introduced with the Powerstroke. And I remember all of the rigmarole about this engine being put in this truck. Said they'd never be able to get this engine to fit, and somehow Ford made it fit. They then came out with the new body style, which obviously has more height in the engine bay, and allowed them to do other things with the 7.3. Regardless,
If you have any input on this, go ahead and put something down in the comments. But so this is basically a stock 7.3 Powerstroke diesel. It does have a turbo shop down tube. So rather than that compressed taco-shaped downpipe from the turbo that came stock from the factory because of the limited firewall clearance, this one actually has a full 3.5-inch round tube that goes from the turbo outlet down below the truck. This does have a straight-through exhaust. I have a turbo shop chip for the computer on this. So for the year and model that this truck is, you know, this was the hot ticket back then. Now the diesels are putting out just insane amounts of torque and horsepower, where this one, I think the horsepower stock was like 215 or something like that, and torque was somewhere in the 390 range, close to 400. The stuff now is like 1,000 horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. It's just unbelievable. But this truck scoots. It gets down the road. We pull a 22-foot enclosed box trailer with, you know, those cars, the Factory 5 Cobras. I've had the Maverick project in that trailer, and this truck has no problems pulling any of that, even up a grade. So I have no complaints. This one has drum brakes in the rear, which I've never had an issue with. Brakes work great on this. Future upgrades for this, I did get a intercooler from the later model 7.3/6 liter that we will be putting in this in a future episode. I have the 1999 Ford Spider adapter that will go on the cold side of the turbo to feed the intake, and then that also has the two pipes that feed the intercooler. It's a weird contraption, but it was like a 1 year only option, so they were really tough to find. Now they were something you could order from Ford, from a Ford dealer back in the day, but they're no longer making those, so you have to get one off a wreck truck. I found one on Evil Bay probably about a year ago, so you'll know how long I've been putting together parts for this particular modification. So when we do that, we'll end up taking the entire front of the truck apart, grill, everything back to the core support. The air conditioning condenser has to come loose, the oil cooler has to come loose, relocated, the hood latch has to be modified, all that stuff in order to make the intercooler fit. And then we'll be using stock 99 and later turbo tubes to tie into the existing intake on this thing. I have no plans to change the injectors, to upsize the injectors of the turbo. The truck's just dead reliable. I'm just trying to get the EGTs down, because with the turbo shop chip, when you're into boost, because this increased the boost, max boost on the stock setup was about 15-16 pounds. Boost with the turbo shop chip is somewhere close to 23, maybe 24, 25. It's hard to tell with an analog gauge, but with that amount of boost, I'm generating higher EGTs, and you know, if you are up a steep grade for extended times, you know, you got to downshift in order to keep the EGTs down. And I'd rather not do that, because the truck will pull it. It's just the exhaust gas temperatures start getting so high that I'm afraid the computer is going to like go into limp mode and, you know, start doing its thing to save the engine, and it should. But at the same time, if we can get the EGTs down, we'll keep it from downshifting or having to manually downshift it. So that's about it for the motor. The truck is lowered 7 inches in the front and about 9 inches in the back. I'm running on tires for, I think it's a Ford Transit van on the front. I can look up the sizes. And then I think on the back I'm running a 225/75, which is a pretty common dually size tire, but this originally came with, I think, 215/85s, which are really tall. So in order to get the stance just right, I've changed the tires, so there's a little bit of a rake to the truck. The truck does have airbags in the back. They're manually adjustable, nothing too fancy. There's a button in the ashtray to raise it and a dump valve in the ashtray again to lower it. About the only time we use the airbags is when we tow. It does have a 12,000 pound tow hitch on the back. I could get into a long story. This is our second tow hitch. But we'll leave it at that for right now. We pull it bumper pull with the car trailer, and we never have an issue. We do not use stabilizer bars on the trailer. We've been in fairly windy conditions and never had a problem with it. The dually just gives you a lot more stability. Now, that's not to say that the trailer doesn't get jostled around just a little bit, but I've never had a problem with being able to control the trailer behind this truck. The interior is pretty much all stock. I added an aftermarket radio in it only because on long trips it's nice to be able to have the DVD player to keep the passenger side of the car a little bit quiet. We do have a set of gauges here. I custom made those gauge pods because back in 1995 nobody made a gauge pod set for the A-pillar. So those are custom made. I made those out of, I think, 2-inch PVC or something like that, and custom molded it, painted them to match. So they were actually, it worked out really well. They put them in a good spot to read. Typical inside, back seat, nothing special. What else can I tell you about the truck? It does have the Gaylord's hard lid on the back. The back of the truck tends to become a workbench here at the shop because, as you can see, it's a nice big area to lay out parts. So you'll always see the blanket down on the back of the truck when you see it in the background of any of our videos. This has just been a great truck. I did daily this truck for the first year that I had it. The contractor that I was working for, we had work trucks, company work trucks for years and years. And for whatever reason, they decided that they wanted to do some cost savings. And so the first thing they did was get rid of the work trucks. And of course, I had no daily at the time because I had always driven the work truck home. So I wasn't in a panic, but I went one weekend, and probably the first weekend that these trucks were available. And we picked this one up, pulled it off the dealer's lot. They had two of them at the time. And I had read all the reviews on the truck. I just loved everything about the diesel. It was my first diesel experience, and it's actually been a really great truck. It's primarily used for towing now, and it just kind of sits here and looks pretty in the videos. But we do take it out from time to time. Every once in a while, we'll decide to take this out to my folks' house or something. It's really nice because it's comfy inside. It rides so nice now that it's lowered. With the airbags in the back, it just rides like a luxury car. And with the sway bar package that the truck had on it, because it's set up to pull a trailer anyways, it actually corners pretty good too. So I'm not going to win any autocrosses in it, but it's been a great truck so far. I have no complaints. So I think we found the culprit for our leak. Look forward to seeing more videos of this truck in the future when we do the intercooler. I want to add an EGT gauge, so I don't know if I'm going to eliminate the trans temp gauge that I have on the A-pillar or just invest in a new A-pillar pod, because now since they're available, they're dirt cheap. And if that's the case, I'll just add an EGT gauge so I can monitor that function of the engine as well. But that's it for now. We'll see you guys next time.